The topic is today's mastering CCTV backup and redundancy.
Yeah, okay, let's go ahead of our content and let's see what are we going to talk about today on our training session. So first of all, we are going to talk about storage concepts like hard disk grouping and hard disk coda likewise. And secondly, we are going to talk about how we can attach a network attached storage to our system. And then we are going to talk about getting backups using USB and eSATA, and also about this RAID redundancy and performance technology. We are going to further talk about it in the RAID level, and after that we are going to talk about N+1 redundancy, hardware failover redundancy. We are going to talk about how we are going to do that, and at final stage we are going to talk about ANR, automatic network replenishment technology, how we can have our recordings even in network failure. Okay, so let's start with storage concept first. Okay, when we are going to talk about storage concept, first of all, let's talk about how we can identify how many hard disks can be integrated into a NVR or a DVR. So if you guys have already been with our IP and analog training sessions, most of you guys must have an idea about what I'm going to talk right now. So in this naming scheme, the suffix part, it means after this dash sign. If you are talking about the NVR, it means 5, 6, 7 digit part. Here, after this dash, you can see an I. It means product platform. So if you are talking about an NVR, there can be Q, K, and I. And after that, you can see the digit. That digit indicates how many hard disks can be integrated into this NVR. So in this case, it would be 2 hard disks in this NVR. When we are talking about the analog side, the DVR side, the story is just the same. With this here with the 6 digit, you can see the product platform, and after that you can see how many hard disks can be integrated into this DVR. Also in this case it would be 2 as well in the DVR. Okay, now we have an idea how we can get the number of hard disks that can be integrated into a NVR or a DVR, but we must also know what is the maximum hard disk capacity that can be integrated into a NVR or a DVR. So in order to get that information, you have to refer the data sheet of the device. So here you can see we are showing you a data sheet of a 76 series NVR. In this data sheet, under the storage and playback section, you can see how many hard disks can be included into this NVR and what would be the maximum capacity of the hard disk that can be integrated. Okay, let's get to the business and let's talk about hard disk quota method. So what simply happens here is you can divide the part of hard disk and allocate each part to a different camera. So here in the bottom of the page you can see a table. So in the quarter 1 you can see they have allocated 1.85 TB, and there's a specific camera, 3 megapixel camera will record in a bitrate of 6145 kbps and for a 1 month. So after this quota is over, it will keep overwriting in the quoted allocated hard disk space. So likewise in this hard disk they have allocated 4 quotas. So this thing will keep going and overriding after the allocated hard disk is over. This is the hard disk quota method. So, Yasanta, can we tell them about the configuration part? How we can do the configuration for this hard disk quota method?
Yes, Varun, I think it is very easy. As you mentioned, both DVR and NVR support this quota, and the main use case is, Varun, sometimes there can be critical cameras that customer want the recording for an extended time of period. Like, let's say the main entrance I want 30 days, other cameras maybe 15 days, 14 days. So you can give higher quota to that particular camera and keep the recording for higher time. So that is the normal method. So what? Let's quickly jump into the NVR interface and see how we can configure this in the NVR. So mostly NVR and DVR, the interfaces are similar. So you don't you can follow the same method. So I will. This is the NVR local GUI, the interface that you get when you connect a monitor to a NVR. So let me try to log in. Right. Okay. Now in here, basically what you can do is you can go to the storage, and you can come to the storage mode. This is where you find the quota. So from here, you can select the camera which you want to give the quota. So by default, the quota mode is enabled for any NVR, any DVR. And for that selected camera, you can select the max recording capacity. So normally by default, it is 0, which means it is based on the total capacity. Equal quota will be given to all the cameras. But if you modify this, you can modify. Now here you can see the available hard disk capacity is 5,649 gigabytes. So out of this, you can allocate by calculating the requirement. So how do we exactly know how much data we need? So for that also, we have a tool, which is the storage and network calculation tool. So let me quickly open that one for you. So we have our website link, tools.hikvision.com, which I will share the link also in the chat. So you can save it for further future reference. So when you go to this link there, you can find a storage calculator, which is here, right here, storage and network. And you can go into the calculation mode. And in here, you are able to determine how much space you need for your camera. For example, I go and click add here, and I select what kind of a encoding method, which is H.264 or 5. And I select the resolution. Let's say we are selecting a 2 megapixel camera, and frame rate may be 25. And you can say you need the recording. You can select the calculate disk space option, and you can say I need recording for 30 days, for example. Then it will show you need 666 gigabytes to record 30 days with 2 megapixel camera, which H.264 compression and 25 frames per second. So basically what you can do is you can use this tool to calculate your requirement and then come to the local GUI of your NVR or DVR and enter that amount in here. So once that is entered, for example, let's enter 60 GB for example. You can also apply and also copy that to several cameras. Let's say you want to configure multiple cameras at the same time. You can select that as well from here and apply the same settings for those cameras. So that is the quota mode that we have showcased. So Varun, I think we can proceed further. Next one, actually, we have the group mode, right?
Yeah. Actually, now you must have an idea of what a quota mode is. Quota mode is in hard disk, you can allocate a separate disk space for each camera to record. In this hard disk grouping method, what we do is we create a group with combining the multiple hard disks. Then we can allocate cameras into this group. So as per your requirement, you can allocate cameras from different combinations, and you can also allocate cameras in 2 groups as well as per your requirement. Isn't it?
Yes, I think Varuna, first thing we have to do is we have to get the NVR into the group mode. So we can enable that from basically come to your storage settings in your NVR, and you can go to the advanced, and you can, yeah, sorry, you have to go to the storage from here. From the storage mode, you have to select the group mode, and you can click on apply. So the thing is, when you apply the group mode, the NVR will be asking for you to reboot to apply the settings. So we will do that. So we will need 2 to 3 minutes to reboot it. So while it is rebooting, Varuna, we can explain the properties. Like this is, Varuna, definitely for a multi hard disk NVR or DVR. For a single hard disk NVR or DVR, we cannot do this, right, Varuna?
Obviously, yeah, obviously. But the main function is grouping the hard disk. So multiple hard disk has to be present inside the NVR or DVR in order for us to proceed with this hard disk grouping function.
Exactly. So at least 2 hard disks you need, and let's say you have an NVR or DVR which doesn't have 2 hard disks, you can still utilize the quota mode which we just showcased to give the allocation, and based on that you can give some cameras a longer period of recording and some cameras a shorter period of recording. So that is the group mode, the quota mode. In the group mode, only the difference is you are able to categorize cameras into different hard disks. Let's say you have a 6 terabyte hard disk and a 4 terabyte hard disk. You can decide which cameras should I record in 6 terabyte hard disk and which cameras should I record in 4 terabyte hard disk. Like that, you can do it. Also, there's a special property, Varuna. We have when we create the group mode, we can select the property, whether it's a read-write hard disk, whether it's a read-only hard disk. For example, people will say, what is the purpose of having read-only? Let's say there is a particular hard disk which is very critical, and you want to, like, this is majorly happening in the NVRs which has maybe 8 hard disks like that. One hard disk, you want to keep that data like for a longer time because it has some critical evidence or something. So what you can do is you can put that immediately into read-only mode, then it will stop writing all the new data. Also, we have the redundancy mode, which is you can select by camera as a redundancy hard disk. So what happens is when you enable one hard disk as a redundancy group, you can enable the redundancy recording in each camera, and those cameras will start writing to the redundancy hard disk at the same time. So you can have a redundancy, like let's say some critical camera, let's say it's a cache counter. And if something happens to the hard disk which is recording that cache counter, you cannot retrieve those data, right? So you can offer the customer the redundancy mode in the same NVR or DVR, where you will record the same camera twice on 2 hard disks. Even if one hard disk fail, you have the other redundancy hard disk to recover it. So that is the requirement of redundancy. And once you have that, you can select what kind of cameras are. It's very simple here. In the camera, you can simply select what cameras you are going to record for each group. So let's go back to our NVR interface, and it is rebooted. I will go to the menu and I will unlock it. And from here, we come back to the storage mode, and now you can see the group mode is enabled, and you can see it has only one hard disk. So for the first hard disk, all the cameras are selected. But here from the storage device, you can come from here and you can edit. Here you can see there are 2 hard disks here. So you can come here and select hard disk and change its group. From here also you can change it, whether it's a read-only or a redundancy. And you can click on apply and click on OK. And you can see the group is showcased here in this table. And when we come to this storage mode again, and you can select the record group 2, and you can select which cameras that you want to record in the group 2. So if you want to duplicate, like if you want to do on the group 1 also, you can record all the cameras. Group 2 also, you can do all the cameras. That is okay. That is applicable. But if you want a redundancy, also you can do, which we will show in the presentation, how we can enable the redundancy. So for enable redundancy also, you have to change the hard disk type to redundancy from here, and Then you can go to the camera schedule and apply the redundancy from here. You can select which camera you want to have the redundancy. Let's say first camera, you come to the advanced and you can enable redundancy recording from here. Then automatically it will start recording for the redundancy hard disk. So this is the basic idea of group mode and how you enable redundancy. I hope Varun, our viewers got a clear idea about these two basic modes, which is the very key fundamental management tools of basic recording management of a NVR or a DVR.
Obviously, we did a thorough explanation. I think they got an idea about extensively what it's happening here and how we can configure those modes. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us in the Q&A section as well.
And Varuna, with that, I think we can move on to the next segment of attaching an NAS or otherwise NAS or otherwise network attached storage. So which is a very common requirement nowadays in CCTV. Majorly this comes, Varuna, let's say when there's a theft, the first thing nowadays the robbers will do is they will take the DVR with them, right? Or DVR or NVR with them.
Yeah, obviously. So there won't be any records for us to catch them.
Yeah, they want to destroy the evidence. So normally, most people try to take the DVR or NVR with them. So then, that case, what we can do is we have to have a redundancy, otherwise a separate backup of this NVR. So even the major device is stolen, you still have the recordings in another place. So that is the major reason sometimes attaching NAS. But also some customers might want, let's say they have a DVR only 2 hard disks supported. Already the 2 hard disk is being utilized, but they want to extend their recording period. Let's say currently it is supporting only 30 days, but without changing the NVR or DVR, they want to extend it to 90 days or something more. So what they can do is they can attach an NAS for storage expansion purpose, not for backup, for storage expansion purpose. So these are the 2 key things, Varuna, when it comes to the NAS, these days very commonly being used. So I will show you very common NAS, how we can configure and do the configuration. So I have logged into a very basic NAS, very common NAS in the market. And when you log into the NAS from their web address, you will have this kind of an interface. So first, there are actually 2 ways that you can configure a NAS to record in NVR. One way is like you can directly go to the control panel of this. Oh yeah, from the apps. From this particular NAS brand, there's a separate SAN manager. So you can come to the SAN manager and open ISCSI, which is the standard protocol for creating virtual hard disks. So basically you can come here and create an iSCSI drive. So when you click on create, you can give it a name, and also you can click next and then create. If you want to create a LUN, you can create a LUN. Otherwise, if you already have a LUN created, you can map it to existing LUN, or you can map it later. So LUN is a basic virtual unit of a iSCSI device. So when you create the LUN, you can give it a name. So I will call it test. And also there are 2 provisioning methods, thick provisioning and thin provisioning. Also you can the most better performance is given by thick provisioning, and you can enter the capacity. Let's say, for example, I'm entering 70 GB for this one, and I click next, and you will see all the details, and you can click on done, and you will see in this particular NAS how many iSCSI targets that we have created. So this is an iSCSI target. Once we have created a target, you can enable to connect to that particular target. So now this target 4, you can see which we just created is now ready. And if you expand this, it will show the details and the capacity. So now when this is done, you can come to the NVR. So let me quickly log into the NVR. All right, I have the NVR, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to load the NVR web interface. So this is very simple. You open Internet Explorer, or you can run the Edge in compatibility mode for Internet Explorer, and you just simply type the NVR or DVR IP address, and you will be presented with this login interface. So I'm going to simply enter my password and log into this particular NVR. Once you logged in, you can go to the configuration page. And from the configuration page, you can come to the storage section. Under the storage section, there's a segment for storage management. In that storage management, you go to the net HDD. And you can see here, you can add up to 8 net hard disks. So in the start of this training program, Baruna, we showcased the maximum supported capacity for NVR or DVR. We can find it from the datasheet, right?
Yeah, even from the model number, they can find it.
Definitely. So the one thing you have to keep in mind that you can connect up to 8 NAS or iSCSI drives to this, but the maximum capacity should not exceed the maximum supported capacity of that particular NVR or DVR. Let's say in the datasheet, it is mentioning maximum supported up to 8 terabyte. You cannot add more than 8 terabyte drive or network drive into this. So let's say we have created the, in here we can see the target 4 is ready with a 70 GB capacity, and I'm going to search for it. Basically, when you are adding a iSCSI drive, you have to go to the IP SAN mode and click on enter the server address. So I'm going to enter the server address here and click search. So you have to keep in mind, you have to enter without any HTTPS or anything, just the IP address, and you can perform a search and you will see the target 1, 2, and 4. But here, if you go, there are actually target 3 also here, but here the target 3 is not listed. Anyone from the audience know why this is not coming up here? So I have created a iSCSI target. Yeah, we have a hands up. If you can just drop in a chat, I think people they are already experienced people who know about this. So one iSCSI target can be connected only to a one client. So that is the rule here. So the target 3 you can see already connected. So it is not showing up here. So I'm trying to connect to target 4. I'm selecting target 4 and I click OK. And you can see the target 4 is here. Then I click on save. Yes, Roshan is already given the answer. He has mentioned that once the iSCSI target is connected, you can connect it to another client. So here now I have enabled the target 4. So target 3 also connected to the same NVR. You can see here. That is okay. So when I come to the hard disk management, now you can see that 70 GB hard disk drive, and it is showing as unutilized or uninitialized. So first thing you have to do is you can click this and you can format it, initialize it, and do the needful. So that is one way of doing adding a NAS to a NVR or DVR. Then you can use it as a normal hard disk. You can do the group mode. You can use it as a redundancy. You can even use it in the quota mode. So hard disk provisioning will be happening automatically in the quota mode. In the group mode, you can put into a different group and record some dedicated cameras, or you can even select this as a redundant hard disk and record the backup redundancy also in the same NAS. There's another way. The iSCSI, the thing is, I think Tarido, in the iSCSI, we have once we have connected the target, let's say now somebody has stolen the NVR or DVR. Now we want to check what is the data saved in the NAS. So we can do that. Basically, you can add it to the Windows platform using a this iSCSI initiator. So simply you open this iSCSI initiator, but before adding that, you have to detach it from the NAS, from the NVR, because as we mentioned, one iSCSI can be added to only one client. So I'm going to the target 3, I'm going to detach. Let's say now this particular NVR was stolen. So it is already detached when it is disconnected from the network. So what I'm going to show you is how we can attach this. Now I disconnected the target 3. It has already some data recorded in it. How we can view it from the computer. So to view it from the computer, you simply come to this and search for that particular IP address. You enter that IP address here again without HTTPS and the slashes, and click on quick connect, and it will show you all the targets. So I want to connect to the target 3. I will show you another one. The target 4 is already connected to NVR. So if I try to connect to target 4, it will not allow me to connect because it's already connected to the NVR. So that's why you have to disconnect it from the NVR first if you want to connect it to a computer. So what? Yeah, I'm going to use the target 1, which is already have some data, so I can show you. So now you can see it is connected. So when you go to your computer management and you open up your disk management here. So let me push it up here. Yeah, you can see that 50 GB drive, which is target 1, is there, and it is showing as not initialized, and it is showing as unknown. That is perfectly fine, because in NVR or DVR, the hard disk is formatted into a very special format compatible with Linux platforms, so it will be not detected on Windows as a normal hard disk drive. So how we read the files in this hard disk drive? So one thing is you come here and make sure that the iSCSI, the target is properly attached to the Windows. Then we have a software called Hikvision MVA. This is the software. So I will share a quick link in the chat to download this software, so which you can save and keep it as a reference to download. So and you can use it in your projects. So I'm just sending the link into the group. So in Zoom, you can see the link. So you can download the software from that and install it into your computer. And you can click, once you open this software, you can come to this reload disk and it will show you all the disks. And you can select what time you want to see the playback. I'll select today, and I can simply click search. And it will show the DVR, the channel, and I can simply play back the file. So you can see it will show the recording like a normal recording, and you can do the export, clipping, everything can be done through this software. So as a summary, Varuna, let's say you have attached the NAS using iSCSI, and somebody installed your NVR or DVR. You simply attach that iSCSI initiator through this Windows iSCSI initiator and make sure that it is attached to your Windows operating system properly. Install Hikvision MEA software, load it to that, and you can do the playback, export, everything can be done through this. Not only this NAS, let's say you have a CCTV hard disk, you attach it to the normal computer, still you can view the files through using this Hikvision MEA software. So that is the basic way of connecting NAS through iSCSI to a Hikvision NVR. We have another way, I will quickly show that as well. The other way is we can use, you can come to the NAS, you can go to the control panel, and you can go to the file services and make sure that you have enabled NFS, and you can have the NFS version 3 or 4, that is fine. And come to the shared folder, and you can simply create a shared folder here like that. You give it a name, select which volume you want to give. But here the disadvantage is you cannot control the capacity. If you go for iSCSI, you can set how many gigabytes you want to allocate from the NAS. But here it is simply a shared file service. So you can create an NFS volume here, and you can see when you come to the edit the NFS volume, you can see the NFS permissions. Under that, you have to add this particular NVR IP address and give it the permission, and make sure you have given the read and write privileges to that NVR. So here you can see already I have entered the NVR IP address, which is 110. So I can simply come to this, and I can search for that here. But this time I'm going to select NAS. So remember last time when we were using iSCSI, we selected IPsat, but here this time we have to select NAS, and my IP address is 123. So I'm going to copy this one, come here again and enter without HTTP colons and slashes, and click on search. And it will be showing as the path, and you can simply add that as well. So it will be a common folder, you cannot control the capacity, but still it will act as a normal hard disk, and you can do it, configure it. Also you can see, once you have enabled it from the NAS itself, you can see the files. So if you go open the file station, from here, you can see the file that you had just created, the common file, and you can see the files. So inside there, the recording files, you can download it from the NAS itself directly. But in the iSCSI, you have to connect it to a iSCSI initiator like this. So that is the only difference. But all in all, we recommend the iSCSI initiator to work with a NAS if you are working with a third-party NAS. But if you are working with a Hikvision NAS, this is very simple. You can directly add the NVR directly to the NAS interface and the hybrid SAN, we call it hybrid SAN, and which is things are very much easier than using a third-party NAS. So I hope that our viewers got a very clear idea about how to attach a third-party NAS to a Hikvision NVR or DVR. Varuna, anything else that we should add, or can we move forward?
Yeah, I think you pretty much explained everything in a simple manner. I think they got an idea. So I think we can move forward considering the time also.
Okay, Varun. So going forward, I think we are looking at some couple of other basic concepts as well, which is especially coming into when we are doing the recording management. There is a cycle recording, which is automatically overwriting the old files. So here, how you enable the cycle recording? By default, it is enabled. In any case, if you want to disable it, you simply come to the NVR storage settings, click on advanced, and remove this overwrite tick. And also you have the redundant recording, which I just explained. You can record in 2 hard disks, the same camera. So I just showed you in the practical session how we can configure the redundant recording. So that is also very simple. So basically from the camera, we select the redundant record capture option. And also we have the expired option, which is if you want particular camera to record only a specific time period, let's say I don't want 33 days, I want exactly 30 days. So what you can do is in your storage schedule, in the recording schedule, you can go to the advanced and click a video picture expiry time. What will happen is after that expiry, it will be automatically deleted from your hard disk, saving capacity. So with this also, you can set up a precise timeline, because let's say if you calculate using the storage calculation tool, this is not precise because it actually depends on your real scenario. Let's say there's not too much movement, the bandwidth utilization and let's say this bit rate is not that much. So here the bit rate, actually it's a variable bit rate. You can also configure it for a fixed bit rate, but mostly it is being used as variable bit rate. So let's say at night there are no movement, only the static picture. So you can go for a lower bit rate and save some space and bandwidth. So at that time, let's say you calculate using this tool, it is not precise. You cannot have, let's say you allocate for this one 4 terabyte, it says 180 days, but it is not precise. It depends on the actual situation. If that actual situation is a busy scene, you will have maybe 178 days, 175 days like that. If it is not a very busy day, very busy scene that having for the camera, maybe sometimes you get 190 days. So it is not precise. So if you want to have a precise backup period, you come here in the recording schedule and go to the advanced and you can select the expiry time. And also there are certain cases that you have certain evidence, the video files that you have recorded, you don't want them to overwrite. You want to keep them forever. So you can simply come to the NVR interface and go to the file management and search your particular file which you want to keep, and you can lock it. Once you have locked it, it will prevent from overwriting and you can have that file without being overwritten into the hard disk. So those are some basic concepts, Varuna, when it comes to the storage, quota mode, redundancy, and things like that. Next, we have lined up the backup. So that I will also show you Varuna quickly in our interface. Let me load our.
That would be great or something.
Yes. So I will first show how we can do the USB backup. So in the NVR local interface, we can go to the playback and we can select which camera we want to do the playback. Let's say this camera, and I can see the handler, and I can see the time period I want to clip. So let's say this time period I want to clip, I select clip, and I select the clip time, and I enter how much the start time and the end time, and I simply can click on export. So it will show my I have to connect the USB drive into the disk, and I can from here I can format it if I want, and I select the backup type as default MP4 AVI. We would recommend to use the default. You can play it in a normal computer and click OK, and it will start exporting. When you come to the here on the top right corner, when you click on backup, it will show you an indication of how much percentage is completed and how the backup process is going on. So that is simple as like that. You come here, clip the part what you want, and simply export it. So another option we have is the eSATA backup. So let me quickly show you the eSATA backup. eSATA means external SATA. So before going into the external SATA backup, one thing, the external SATA port has to be present on your NVR. So this is another NVR I just connected. Let's go and quickly look at what is the NVR. I go to menu. Let me unlock it. So if I go here and I check the settings, it is a IDS 96 series NVR. So to have a eSATA port, you should have at least a 96 series NVR. And you can back up. The major purpose is like you can connect the eSATA hard disk and extend your storage. That is one thing. So you can simply extend your storage. So I come to the storage device, and you can see there is a hard disk already connected. The type is eSATA. So we have connected to the eSATA port or hard disk. So this can be used as an expansion. Let's say, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a eSATA port, let's say inside the NVR or DVR, or you can support only 2 hard disks. Customer asking you to extend it. So simply you get a eSATA hard disk and connect to this port, give the power, and you can extend it. Also, you can clone the entire hard disk from the, let's say here we have only one hard disk, only the eSATA hard disk. Let's say the actual scenario, there are hard disks installed inside the NVR, and you want to clone one of those hard disks. So simply you can clone it from settings, come to the settings page of this, and go to the hard disk operation, and go to this HDD clone, and you can select the clone target destination as your eSATA drive and capacity. And normally you will see your here the hard disk here. So what happens is here, one thing you have to mention is you go to the usage. Actually, in the eSATA usage, you have to first select the usage as export and click on apply. Then come back to this maintenance HDD operation, HDD clone, and you can select. But I think here the RAID is enabled. With the RAID, I think we are not able to clone, because RAID itself is a different concept. With the RAID, you are not able to clone a hard disk. This is applicable only when you are using non-RAID situation. You can directly clone your hard disk into a eSATA hard disk and connect it to a laptop or like that, and using Hikvision MVA software, which I showed earlier, we can just do the playback, export, and everything. But if you are using RAID, you have to keep in mind, you cannot clone the RAID hard disk into a eSATA hard disk. That is the only difference. So normally this can be used to clone your hard disk when it is not in RAID mode. Okay, so I think the USB backup and SATA backup also, I think our viewers got an idea. Now it has come to a very interesting part. I think, Varuna, we are talking about the RAID. Varuna, I think in the RAID before getting into the RAID Varna, we have to give a little idea about hard disk interface types. So normally early stage in the computer technology, we had the IDE, ATA. You might remember if you are coming from a very old, if you have used i3, not i3, the Pentium 2, 3 computers, you know the IDE, ATA interface. Then we have the SCSI interface. Modern computers use the SATA, and we have the SAS, which is the latest technology. So currently, the RAID is supported in the SATA and SAS interfaces. So it is good that you have a basic idea of hard disk interfaces. Then let's jump into the RAID modes. There are different RAID modes. So RAID is actually a method of doing a redundancy within the device. So when we attach a NAS, it is not within the device. If the device is failed, the NAS will still have the recording. But you have to keep in mind, RAID is within the device. It is for the hard disk failure. If something happens to one of your hard disks, you can swap it with a good hard disk without losing your data. So RAID is currently being used, widely used in surveillance applications. And there are RAID 1, RAID 0, 1, RAID 5, like that. There are different RAID modes. Mostly used RAID type is the RAID 5. But RAID 1 is, I will simply tell you, RAID, to do RAID 0, you need at least 2 hard disks, and your data will be stripped and circulated into your two hard disks separately, but there's no redundancy. But the performance is very high because you have access to 2 hard disk drives with 2 bus speeds, and you can get high performance. So if you want to have high performance scenario, you can go for RAID 0, but there's no redundancy. If one hard disk fail, your data will be lost. So we don't recommend using RAID 0. RAID 1 is coming with the block redundancy, means it is a duplicate, exactly like cloning, but using the RAID technology. So when you copy a file to the system, it will be copied to 2 hard disks. It will keep always 2 copies. Let's say this disk one failing, you can remove this disk and plug another similar disk, and automatically their data can be rebuilt. So you will not lose your data. So it is it is giving you block redundancy, and cost is very high because let's say you are using 2 6 terabyte hard disk, but you can use only one 6 capacity. Only 6 terabyte can be used. The security is very high. So if you have very high security data requirements and still you want to keep the performance and speed, you can go for a RAID 1. Then the most common way is RAID 5. You need at least 3 hard disks. To do this, the data will be stripped, and also there's a thing called parity. So the parity will be checked from the stripped hard disk. The parity is like, I will show in the next slide what is the parity and how it works. But this RAID 5 is the perfect balance between performance and data redundancy. You still want to have the performance, and at the same time you want to have the redundancy, you can go for a RAID 5. And in a RAID 5 setup, at any given time, up to 1 hard disk can be failed, and you can swap it, and you can rebuild the array, RAID array, without any problem. But in some cases, let's say you are worried about hard disk getting failed. What if 2 hard disks fail at the same time? Then you can go for a higher RAID 1. So we also support some higher grade RAID techniques, which can sometimes allow 2 hard disks to be failed at the same time. So let's dive into RAID and let's see how we can do this. So here we are trying with 3 hard disks. You can, in Hikvision systems, you can go up to 6 hard disks, what we recommend, but in RAID in common, RAID is supported up to 20 hard disks. So you can enable RAID 5 up to 20 hard disks together. You can create a RAID array. But in Hikvision, NVR and DVR, we can support up to 6 RAID hard disks, but minimum is 3. From 3, 4, 5, 6, you can create a RAID 5 array. So here we are showing the example with 3 hard disks, but even you use 4, 5, 6 hard disks, the principle is the same. So you have the 3 hard disks. Let's say there's a 200 megabyte video file. The RAID system will split this file into 2 files, part 1, part 2. Very simple. Then now the system has the complete video file and splitted 2 files. Then for the parity disk, we call it a parity disk, which stores the total file. He will store the total file in the disk 1. So now the parity is the disk 1. Then the part 1 go to the disk 2, part 2 go to the disk 3. Fine. Now what will happen? Let's say disk 1 fail. Disk 1 fail and we remove that disk and insert a new disk and we rebuild the array. Then this video file can be rebuilt because we already have the part 1 and part 2. We just merge it and rebuild the video file. Let's say disk 2 fail. We remove the disk 2 and insert a new disk. Can we make the part 1? Yes, because we know the part total file. We already have the part 2. Then it is very simple to identify what is part 1. Then he will also rebuild and create the part 1. Same like that, disk 3 fail. He can, when we insert a new disk, it can create the part 2 as well. So it is very simple. So as you can see here, the video file equals part 1, part 2. So if you have 4 hard disks, the video will be split into 3 parts. One hard disk will have the parity, will have the total file. Other 3 will have the part 1, 2, part 1, 2, 3 like that. So depending on the hard disk count. In here, when you create an array like this, a RAID array, let's say each disk is 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte. Your RAID capacity will be only 2 terabyte. You have to remove always one hard disk for parity. So one hard disk in RAID 5, one hard disk goes out for parity and other will be there. So capacity will be total capacity minus the capacity of a one hard disk drive. Let's see how we can create a RAID. There are 2 ways that we can simply create a RAID. One is the one touch configuration, which is coming with all Hikvision, NVR, DVR, and hybrid stands, which is supporting RAID. And you have to keep in mind only 9.6 series NVR support RAID technology. Also, you are able to create the manually the RAID. Let's quickly dive into the NVR and see how we can create a RAID. Go to the menu, I log in, and you come to the storage, and you go to the advanced and make sure that RAID is enabled. So when the RAID is enabled, you will see this menu, and you will see this hard disk currently not allowed to any array. So here, when it is like this, you have this one touch configuration. You click on simply one touch configuration, give your array a name, and simply click OK. Then it will automatically do all the things for you and create the RAID array for you. It will create a hot spare disk. It will create a create your array and everything. So normally the standard is when you have 4 hard disks, for example, here this NVR has 4 hard disks, you keep 1 for hot spare, 3 for array. Let's say 1, 2, 3 hard disk, you create the array. Then each hard disk is 5 here 6 terabyte. So you will get 12 terabyte capacity. One hard disk completely keep for hot spare. And you can configure it from here for hot spare. Once you have configured it for hot spare, it will show us as global. So let's say there is this hard disk fail, automatically this 4th hard disk will take its duty and you can remove this 2nd hard disk. Like that, you can create a hot spare from here. Another thing is you can manually create the array from here, give it a name, select the physical hard disk you need to create and click OK. And here also you can create. Let's say there is a NVR with 8 hard disks and you have to create 2 arrays. Each hard disk, 3 hard disk and 2 hot spare drives. Like that, you can customize according to your requirement, or you can go with our one touch configuration, which is most common way when you install NVR with redundancy. If you want to enable RAID 5, you simply come here and from here do the one touch configuration. That is the other option. So I believe that with that, Barun, our viewers got a clear idea how the one-touch configuration can be done, as well as the how the RAID different RAID manually RAIDs can be created from here.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the presentation. So this is how the same thing that we just checked on the NVR interface, how the RAID can be created, and how after the RAID is created, it will take some time to initialize. So depending on the RAID size, it can take sometimes days. So you have to keep in mind, if you are doing a big project and you have maybe 20, 30 hard disks to create a RAID, it will take maybe 5, 6, 7 days to initialize and get the RAID ready. So you have to keep that in mind. And once the RAID is ready, it will show as functional, and it will show what is the hot spare disk allocated for this physical disk. And also if something happened, let's say if this status is degraded, means one hard disk is failing. After you swap that hard disk, you can rebuild from this interface. Those are the manual RAID configuration and maintenance things. So next up, until our viewers are registering for the Rappel draw, we will go into the other part of the training mark.
Yeah.
Where we cover the N+1. N+1 is Varuna. Can you give us a quick idea about N+1 and how it works?
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, what N+1 means is here, if in any case, if there is hardware failure, there will be an offline device will be ready to take over that failed hardware. So it would be a if there is basically what happens is, I think you already got the idea. If there is something wrong with the already operating hardware, there will be an offline device, backup device will be waiting to take over if there's some failure occurs in the operating NVR or a hardware. So basically, when we are doing this N+1 hardware redundancy, maximum we can go is up to 32 numbers. We can allocate one redundant offline device. So if you are using more than 32 devices, you have to separately add another device to cater this N+1 hardware redundancy. I think let's go to the next slide. Okay. Here. Yasant, can you go back? Okay, I think the animation just came out. Can you just move forward with the animation? So you can see the NVR is working now, and the network breaks down. It means the operation, there is a failure in the operation. So with that failure, as I told you, there will be a backup hardware device will be waiting if there's something wrong. So all these cameras will be switched to the backup NVR for recording. And after the network get restored, the hardware failure is resolved, then automatically these recordings will be transferred to the operating NVR that was working at the initial condition. Okay, Yasant, can you explain about this configuration and all about the logical
Yes,
approach
Varuna, I
to
think,
this N+1 hardware redundancy?
yes. So N+1 is actually the, as Varuna mentioned, for hardware failure. So previously, all we talk about hard disk failure for RAID and NAS for the backup. And now we have the N+1, as Varuna mentioned, you can go up to 30 NVRs and create a one backup, but it has to be identical. Your NVR, backup NVR has to be identical. You can't use 16 channel NVR with a 8 channel NVR as a backup NVR. So in this N+1, you have to have an identical backup in the even the hard disk, and everything should be, the configuration should be identical. Then so this is obvious, at least 2 devices you need to configure the N+1 system, and you select one device as a hot spare device, and then what you do is go to the normal device and add that hot spare NVR to that normal device, and the normal device also should be added to the hot spare device and finish it. So one hot spare can be added to the 32 thing. Let's see how we can set the hot spare unit. So basically you go to the system and select the hot spare and change the work mode to normal mode. And also you have to enable, click on enable and enter the IP address of your hot spare NVR, and also enter the username and password, and you can click on apply and it will show the working status. So this is your normal NVR. You go and configure the hot spare device IP address. And for the hot spare unit, you simply go to the system and enable it as a hot spare mode. You don't have to configure anything. You just enable as a hot spare mode, then it will be working as a hot spare device. So after hot spare system is rebooted, so let me go back just to explain. When you enable the hot spare, the NVR will ask you to reboot the system. So after it is rebooted, you have to come to this system hot spare mode, and you will then see the device list. So from clicking on add in, you can add 32 NVRs up to this hot spare NVR, and automatically it will be working as a hot spare device for that particular NVR. So that is how it works. And when let's say one NVR is failing and this hot spare is now working, it has taken the workload and it is working, it will show what is the status. So if the working status is no record, means the device, actual device that you have added is working properly. Backup means that device is offline and this one is using as a backup. Synchronizing means that device has come back online and the data was stored in this backup NVR now being transmitted to the actual failed NVR. And Varuna, I think our viewers got an idea about N+1 configuration, which is highly useful compared to the enabling hardware level redundancy. Not only the hard disk drive, when we want to face for a failure of an NVR, we can go for N+1. And also there's another, when we talk about the storage and recording, there's another technology we cannot forget about, right, Varuna?
Yeah, obviously. So as Asanta told that now we have talked about many kind of failures and many kind of redundancies that we can use. But here we are going to talk about ANR. What actually ANR is? ANR is automatic network replenishment. So what happens here is if there is some kind of a network failure and the camera feed cannot be transferred to the NVR, we can integrate a micro SD card in the IP camera, and then the camera will record the feed while the network is failing, and after the network is restored, what the camera will do is it will push all these recordings with the timestamp to the NVR. So in the NVR there won't be any loss of videos in the time of the network failure, and because the IP camera is sending the videos with the timestamp, there will be a complete flawless video in the NVR. Yasanta, please, can you please let them know about the configuration part, how and what they
Yes.
need to do in order to achieve this ANR function?
Yes, Varuna. I think configuration also pretty simple. You can go to the NVR, and in the web page, you go to the storage. Under the storage, you have the schedule settings. In that advanced, you can create enable the ANR simply, and you have to have a SD card on your camera. And when the ANR is enabled, automatically it'll take care about the rest. If there's any failure in the camera or some issue, it will start recording into the not in the camera actually. If there's any failure in the connection to the camera, until it is being rectified, it will start recording to the SD card. And once the connection is rectified, it will immediately transfer those data to the NVR. So it is enabling it is very simple as mentioned here. So if you look at this tool, it is very straightforward here. The thing is, the magic happens with this encoding. If you take a normal video stream, you know the video is made out of pictures. To give a classic example, when we are schooling, we are writing some diagrams in the pages, corner pages of the pictures, and when we look at all the pages like at the same time, we look it as animation, right? So it's the same concept in use for videos. So which means this frame rate means 25 frames mean 25 pictures being taken per seconds. And when we play it really speed, at a speed, you will see it as a video. But if you use the raw pictures for this video, like AVI is like a raw video, the size is going to be very high. Let's say you are capturing photos, one photo, let's say 2 megapixel photo, one photo is around 1 megabyte. Let's say 1 second will be 25 megabytes. You record for 1 minute, it will be close to 1 gigabyte, right? So let's say you want to transfer one second of data to a from a camera to the NVR. Let's say if the file size is 25 megabyte, you need a 25 Mbps connection. Or calculating it into bits, you have to multiply it by 8 and divide it by 8 and see the bit rate. But the idea is you need to have a large bandwidth. So we use these encoding methods like compression. We compress these videos into compression. So it comes with the compression. So when we select the compression method, it will show if I record 1 minute file, what is the capacity I'm going to use? So we have done a pre-calculation based on this each compression method, and based on that only the tool is designed. So each compression method based on the complexity and the averages that we have calculated, we have come at a very formula. The formula is generated based on the actual data. We have actually done the data recording and calculated in H.264. If we recorded a normal camera, it's 2 megapixel. What is the, with this kind of bit rate, what is the usage? So those averages are fed into this tool, and that is on the only way that we are doing. That's why I mentioned this capacity showing is not 100%. It will not exactly show you the 100%. It is accurate up to 95%. So I hope Mr. Roshan got an answer about that. Based on real-time data only, we have generated the formula, and it is giving you a up to 95% accuracy with the tool. Mr. Dexter, there is a question. In the redundant recording, do the camera sends 2 video streams to the NVR or 1 stream to the NVR to the recording? It's a very good question. So video stream, there can be only 1 stream. Like if the camera is like there, we know that there are cameras supporting multiple streams. But in here, if 1 stream is used for the recording, it is only 1 stream. So there's a difference. Also, there's another concept called connection. Connection and stream are 2 different things. So if you take a camera or NVR, it can have 1 stream for 1 particular camera, but there can be different connections connecting to that stream. So here we support up to 6 streams. That is how we enable, like you can view from multiple devices from the same NVR. You can view from multiple devices because the same stream can be tapped by multiple connections. So yes, for the redundant recordings also, it is using the same stream. There's not going to be multiple streams. And there's a question from Mr. Chintaka Bandara. Once we have enabled RAID 5, for example, in the NVR, can we back up the entire video recording to external disk? Unfortunately, it's not possible because RAID it acts as an array. It is all together as a 1 hard disk. So you merge all the hard disk into a 1 virtual disk and using it as a RAID setup. So you are not able to back up. If you want to back up, you have to have a cluster. You have to do a cluster backup. That is the only way. You take out all the hard disks and do a cluster backup, and you can have that replication. That is a drawback, but compared to normal recording, like in a quota mode or group mode, RAID gives you a great deal of redundancy, especially when there's a failure of your hard disk. Hassle-free, you can swap it. That is the major purpose of RAID. But if you want to back up like entire disk using an external disk, it is not possible for RAID.
Right. Thank you very much, team. And thank you very much, guys. And we will inform you the next training soon.